February 20th, 2005, began like any other day for British Airways Flight 268, a routine long-haul journey across the Atlantic from Los Angeles to London. The Boeing 747-400 was a symbol of technological advancement and reliability and was prepared to transport 370 people across thousands of miles. However, an alarmingly urgent engine surge interfered with the serene rhythm of the aircraft as it soared over California skies. This single event would set the stage for a tense and high-stakes flight, one that would challenge the crew's training and decision-making at every level as the aircraft reached its limits, changing aviation safety rules forever. How did a standard transatlantic flight descend into a situation fraught with danger? This is the extraordinary story of British Airways Flight 268. British Airways Flight 268 was scheduled to be a daily flight from Los Angeles International Airport to London Heathrow Airport. On February 20th, 2005, the flight departed exactly on schedule at 9:24 p.m. local time. Assigned to the flight was a Boeing 747-436, which is the variant of the legendary jumbo jet known to be highly efficient in long-haul and redundancy in emergency situations. The aircraft was powered by 4 Rolls-Royce RB211 engines and was designed for handling even the most demanding flight conditions. With clear skies and no notable turbulence reported throughout the planned path, the weather was ideal for the flight. It was to be a transatlantic flight that would take about 11 hours to fly with 352 passengers and 18 crew members on board. Everything seemed set for a smooth journey. But beneath the serene surface, a succession of cascading challenges was about to emerge. There were 18 highly skilled flight crew members in the cockpit. According to official reports, the captain's identity is undisclosed, but he is said to be a seasoned 48-year-old pilot with more than 12,000 flight hours and having a great deal of experience piloting the Boeing 747. He was supported by 2 first officers, both of whom were well-versed in long-haul operations. The primary first officer was the co-pilot, and the relief first officer was in the jump seat. The team's combined training and expertise would be invaluable in overcoming the hurdles that lay ahead. Flight 268 would take off northeast over the United States into Canadian airspace before it continued over the North Atlantic Ocean to reach the United Kingdom. After takeoff, the Boeing 747 leveled out with all 4 engines roaring in perfect harmony. The flight's first phase went off without a hitch, but as soon as the plane took off over the California desert, the first signs of problems appeared. Not long after gaining an altitude of only 300 feet, the inboard left-wing engine, Engine 2, began running abnormally. The first officer felt the aircraft swing to the left as a tremendous thumping sound shook it. To fix this, he hurriedly pressed the right rudder. The captain spotted the issue right away. Engine number 2, the left-hand inboard engine, had begun to surge. Engine surges occurred due to disruptions in the airflow through the engine, and the loud bangs heard were due to the engine backfiring. Because of the severity of the surge, the engine was momentarily stabilized by an automatic decrease in thrust. The engine's state was still unstable. Although they are not unusual, engine surges can cause catastrophic failure if they are not addressed right away. At the airport tower, air traffic controllers have said to have heard popping sounds and saw sparks flying from the damaged engine as well. And the crew tried troubleshooting the problem. The captain performed the steps as the first officer, who was in the jump seat, read them out loud from the quick reference handbook. For Engine 2, continuous ignition was chosen, and the throttle was gradually increased in an attempt to start the engine again. But every time they attempted, the thumping sound returned, which suggested a serious problem with the engine. The pilots acted promptly when the exhaust gas temperature started to rise to unsafe levels. The captain and first officers reduced power to Engine 2 immediately to stop further damage. Despite their efforts, it soon became evident that the performance of the engine was beyond repair. So, in order to guarantee the safety of the flight, the captain made the critical decision to shut down Engine 2 entirely. The captain had experienced an engine surge in flight previously, but the other 2 pilots had only experienced it during simulations. Although the situation was frightening, it was not considered a full emergency, as the Boeing 747 could be operated well with 3 engines. However, the situation might get worse if the engine fire got more intense or if more engines were impacted. The captain used a pan-pan to indicate the urgency to air traffic control, which is a step short of announcing an emergency. To give crew time to deal with the problem, the controller instructed the plane to rise to 5,000 feet and remain near the airport. The Boeing 747 is designed to handle engine failures safely. It is an aircraft which is licensed to fly with 3 engines. Even with 1 engine inoperative, the aircraft can continue flying on the remaining 3 engines. However, even losing 1 engine has significant implications. Firstly, the fuel consumption of the aircraft will increase because the remaining engines will have to work harder to compensate for the lack of thrust. This will reduce the maximum range of the aircraft. Furthermore, the maximum cruising altitude will decrease for the plane due to less thrust being available to sustain the aircraft at high altitudes. Lastly, the loss of 1 engine limits redundancy designed into the aircraft, which means there will be less margin for error if complications continue to rise. The immediate question facing the crew was whether to return to Los Angeles or proceed toward London. The 3 pilots faced several choices. They could return to LAX immediately, continue to another major airport en route to have the damage assessed and, if necessary, switch planes, or British Airways Flight 268 could continue on its regular course to Heathrow while flying with only 3 engines. Air traffic control deleted the flight plan because they thought the plane would return to the airport. But the pilots made the decision to set off on their flight plan and get as far as they could after consulting with the airline dispatcher. As the plane approached the Irish coastline, the fuel situation became critical. According to the flight management computer's estimation, the aircraft would arrive at Heathrow with a fuel reserve of 7 tons, which is marginally more than the minimum of 6.5 tons that is necessary. This fact presented a grave risk because it left nothing for unexpected delays, such as engine failure or less than ideal weather conditions at Heathrow. They planned to drop down to 29,000 feet to compensate for the diminished thrust from the 3 functioning engines. At first, this strategy seemed feasible. The 747 climbed into the night sky toward its destination. 2 hours later, cruising at 27,000 feet, the flight appeared stable. However, as the flight progressed, strong headwinds over the Atlantic consumed more fuel than anticipated. The FMC's revised calculations showed a steadily declining fuel reserve, which raised concerns about whether the aircraft could reach London with sufficient fuel. Operating in such a scenario was not only against the norms, but also an unacceptable gamble with the safety of the passengers and the crew. Confronted with such a grim reality, the captain made the decisive call to divert to Manchester, a closer airport that provided a safer margin for landing. This decision put safety first of all aboard, but brought new complications. The Boeing 747's fuel system, which was known for its complexity, is designed to balance fuel between multiple tanks to maintain optimal weight distribution and engine performance. However, during the flight, the fuel from Tank 2, which was linked to the failed engine number 2, had stopped feeding into the other tanks as it should. A dangerous imbalance resulted from this disruption, which endangered the fuel supply to the engines that were still running. Further engine failures and a major disaster could occur if the problem persisted. The flight crew took prompt and decisive action. To guarantee a steady fuel supply to the operating engines, they turned on all main tank pumps and opened crossfeed valves, an essential technique that permits fuel to be redirected between tanks. These measures helped stabilize the situation and prevent further escalation. However, the already exhausted pilot's task was greatly enhanced by having to manage the complex fuel system under such demanding circumstances. The passengers could see flames shooting out from under the left wing of the aircraft, which caused panic to arise in the cabin. The captain informed them of the decision to divert to Manchester, citing operational reasons. While some passengers were stricken with tension and fear, most remained calm, trusting the crew to manage the situation. A number of crucial choices were made in the last seconds of the flight. In order to ensure accurate handling during the approach, the captain took manual control of the aircraft as it descended near Manchester. The crew was able to stabilize the aircraft and line it with the runway in spite of the difficulties caused by the fuel imbalance. The 3 working engines were kept running until touchdown by carefully managing every last drop of fuel. British Airways Flight 268 made a successful landing on runway 5L at Manchester Airport at 5:04 a.m. local time. The airplane came to a smooth stop with 5.8 tons of fuel left, which is slightly more than the permissible minimum. All 370 people on board disembarked without injury. British Airways arranged for alternative transportation to London, ensuring that passengers reached their final destinations. The crew received praise for their professionalism and composure under pressure. However, the incident raised important questions about decision-making, fuel management, and procedural adherence during emergencies. The carrier was accused by the Federal Aviation Administration of operating an unairworthy aircraft across the Atlantic Ocean and suggested imposing a $25,000 fine on British Airways. The UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch conducted a thorough investigation of this incident. From their research, the cause of this surge in this engine was internal wear within the Rolls-Royce RB211 engine, resulting in disrupted airflow and shutdown of Engine 2. The investigation report urged British Airways to enhance its crew training programs, specifically focusing on fuel management procedures during 3 engine operations. This recommendation aimed to prevent similar issues in future flights. Additionally, investigators discovered a technical malfunction in the flight data recorder. A short circuit within the Honeywell manufactured unit had erased one of the 8 recording tracks during the flight, which led to the loss of over 3 hours of crucial data, which slightly hindered the analysis of the incident. After being safely repaired and put back into service, the Boeing 747-400 involved in the incident, registered as G-BNLG, flew for almost 10 years before being retired in December 2014. British Airways kept flight number 268 for its route from Los Angeles to London. The airline continued using the 747-400 on this route until 2013, until the newer, more efficient Airbus A380 replaced the iconic jumbo jet. In response to the incident, British Airways implemented significant changes to its procedures. British Airways revised the manuals of the airline to be in line with the Boeing guidelines and introduced simulator training programs to prepare pilots for such complex emergency situations. British Airways Flight 268 demonstrated the resilience of both aircraft design and human ingenuity. Thanks to the crew's expertise and quick thinking, a potentially catastrophic situation ended with every passenger and crew member arriving safely. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.